Welcome, wrestling fans, to a very special new series for Monty and the Pharaoh YouTube channel. I am the Mass Wrestling Fan, and we'll be discussing here on Monty and the Pharaoh YouTube channel unsung heroes of wrestling. That's right. Now, we all talk about the same guys all the time: Ric Flair and Terry Funk and Harley Race and Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant. But I want to dig a little bit deeper. Now, this is going to be a show or a series of shows that the old school fans like the Mike Mooneyhams of the world will appreciate. But what I'm really trying to do is to educate the young Kenny Omega thumb in the ass wrestling fans that don't know a wrist lock from a wristwatch. We're here to educate people. We're here to have a good time. But I don't want to lose the mission that we're trying to make more educated wrestling fans out of the pathetic youth. No offense. So let's start talking about this gentleman. From Battle Creek, North Carolina, Swede Hansen. Now you might be wondering, is he related to the former AWA World Champion Stan the Lariat Hansen? The answer is no. First of all, Swede was around before Stan. Swede also spelled his name with an O at the end of Hansen, whereas Stan spelled it with an E. So this is Swede Hansen. Some of you fans may remember, old school fans may remember the legendary tag team of Swede Hansen and Rip Hawk. The profile Rip Hawk and Big Swede Hansen won tag team titles in as many as 4 different regional territories. They were probably best known for their work in the Carolinas, which was probably the mecca of tag team wrestling at the time. I mean, if you talk to any old school wrestling fan, he'll tell you about Grizzly Smith and all the Andersons, the Minnesota Wrecking Crew, all the great tag teams that came through that era. And you're talking about tag team wrestling. I know a lot of people like the 1980s tag team wrestling of the Fabulous Ones and the Fantastics and the Freebirds. But if you take a look back at the 1950s and 60s and 70s, teams like the Fabulous Kangaroos and the original Assassins, okay? So for all the young wrestling fans who are thinking that the Young Bucks and their 25 super kicks a match invented tag team wrestling, please do your history and your research. And I hope that I'm helpful in that environment of education. Now, I want to thank the composer of the wonderful background music. It's kind of driving me nuts right now, but the Fat Tone Studios with this wonderful symphony, courtesy of Messier Peace Theater over there at Subscribe to Mike Messier YouTube channel, who's allotted me this time. Apparently, Mr. Messier was doing some type of AEW apology videos that went over about as well as a church and a fart. And so now I'm here to save the day, to rectify that situation, and talk about these old school greats. Now, getting back to Swede Hansen, okay? When I was a young wrestling fan, a young mass wrestling fan, I would turn on the television and see this gentleman with a little rebel hat and I dare say a Confederate flag. And he was waving it, and nobody seemed to have any issue with it at the time, although these days you probably couldn't do that, nor would you want to, okay? But big old Swede was about 300 pounds, seemed to be about 6 feet tall, maybe a little bit bigger, maybe a little bit smaller. And he was what you would call a bad guy, okay? He was a person that the fans booed. They did not like Swede Hansen. But, and as a matter of fact, if you remember, or if you look up, when superstar Billy Graham in 82 returned to the WWF, World Wrestling Federation, and destroyed Bob Backlund's championship belt. A little remembered fact is that Bob Backlund was busily wrestling our buddy Swede Hansen at the time. And Swede actually caused so much of a distraction that superstar Billy Graham was able to take that belt, okay, and smash it up. Now, if you watch that video, it's kind of interesting because it looks like superstar Graham is kind of losing his match to the WWF Championship belt. Those eras of the Reggie Park type of belts, the belts were made of such better quality, such more beautiful belts They didn't just have a big dumb W on the cover. It was a nice belt of regality. In any event, what I noticed as a young mass wrestling fan is that Swede Hansen, who was a bad guy, suddenly started getting a little bit of applause from the audience. Suddenly they were cheering this rugged guy. And even though he was wrestling some of their favorites like Rocky Johnson or Special Delivery Jones, Eddie Gilbert before he was Hot Stuff, and eventually the WWF higher ups, Jack Tunney or Pat Patterson, whoever it might have been, they decided, let's give this guy an outing as a fan favorite. And so suddenly Swede Hansen was now wrestling the likes of Magnificent Don Morocco and Big John Studd. As a matter of fact, as a young wrestling fan, a masked wrestling fan, I was in the Capitol Center, Landover, Maryland, Thanksgiving night 1984, when Swede Hansen, believe it or not, wrestled the Intercontinental Champion at the time, Greg the Hammer Valentine. Now, Swede would not win a lot of these high-profile matches. He tended to lose against the likes of a Bob Backlund or a Greg Valentine. He was pretty deep into his career at this point. I mean, we're talking about 1982, 83, 84, 85. Swede officially hung up the boots in 86. But Swede must have been pushing 50 years old. He'd been wrestling since, I believe, 1957. There's some conflicting reports that perhaps Swede Hansen was Bruno Sammartino's very first wrestling opponent, although that's a little bit unclear and a little bit disputed. But Swede Hansen was also instrumental in the career of the Nature Boy Ric Flair. Swede Hansen and Rip Hawk took a young Ric Flair under their wing, and apparently behind the scenes there's a story floating around that a young Ric Flair was getting a little too flirtatious with a woman who was the girlfriend of a mafioso, and Rip and Swede had to calm the mafioso down and talk reason to him, the mafioso member, and so that Ric Flair lived. So without Swede Hansen, you wouldn't have Ric Flair, you wouldn't have Starrcade, and then you wouldn't have WrestleMania. So it's evident that Swede Hansen is the credit for all the good things in professional wrestling. Now, wrestling fans, if you've enjoyed this, I encourage you to get on your little YouTube machine and put up Swede Hansen in your search bar. Look for Swede Hansen versus Bob Backlund. It's a great match, like I said, with the Superstar Graham cameo, although I guess I spoiled it for you. Sorry. It only took place 40 years ago. But there's also, I'm trying to find some of that Rip Hawk, Swede Hansen tag team footage. Perhaps Mike Mooneyham at the Post and Courier can help me do that. But I just really appreciate the efforts of Swede. Unfortunately, Swede actually overcame a heart attack in 1971 and resumed his career for another 15 years. Talk about a tough, raw bone son of a bitch. And unfortunately, Swede passed away, it seems, in 2002. He was divorced twice, married twice, divorced twice. It looks like he had 7 children and 12 grandchildren, according to the reports that I've read. So out there somewhere is some Swede Hansen family. If they want to get in touch with us, please leave a comment here on Monty the Pharaoh YouTube channel. Really happy for this new opportunity. If you folks have any unsung heroes of wrestling that you'd like for me to discuss, leave them in the comments. But remember, we're not looking for the most popular guys that you can remember or women. We're looking for some unsung heroes, people that contributed, but maybe we're not just remembered as much as they should be, okay? I mean, for me, Swede Hansen was the first tweener. Now, what's a tweener? I guess I'd have to explain that to all you young wrestling fans. It's someone who's neither a good guy nor a bad guy, somewhere in between. I mean, even recently with that CM Funk and John Moxley, they had a bit of a tweener feud over there, okay, and in the Florida territory. So that's it. Please subscribe to Monty the Pharaoh YouTube channel if you're not already. Go over to Mike Messier, subscribe to Mike Messier YouTube channel. I'll be doing another series of mass wrestling fan memories over there of live events I attended over the years. And that's about it. So thank you very much. Have a wonderful week and stay wrestling.